مفيش لان احنا ستيجز طالعين. مفيش مثلا. بعد كده ايه يعني؟ لا الاسبوع الجاي مش كريسماس، مش بنحتفل ولا السلام عليكم. Welcome to HIPAA lectures again and again. We see new faces today. You are welcome here, and we are welcoming also David. Thank you for coming. And today will be vroom vroom, yeah? That's nice. A little bit orientation only for the people who are coming for the first time. We will have the lecture today. We will have about 7 o'clock. We will have 15 minutes break. And please don't forget to take your certificates when you finish. One information for you as well, that this lecture is live streamed on our channel on YouTube. Please, if you want to share it with your friends or for your family or for the people who couldn't make to come today, please do that through the YouTube channel. And you can watch it also afterwards. It will be all recorded. And thank you very much and enjoy the lecture.
Thank you. Okay, can everyone hear me? Yeah? Okay, that's always a good start. So firstly, I'm David Benson. I'm a motorsport photographer. I'll go into the introduction. This is my first time at HIPAA. So thank you to HIPAA for inviting me. Thank you for Sony Middle East for setting this up. And thank you for all giving up your evening to attend and hopefully find out a little bit more about working, shooting as a motorsport photographer, some of the challenges, some of the pleasures that we go through, the ups and downs, and the workflow to create the images. So just a quick run through of what we'll go through tonight. So we'll start off with an introduction. I'll talk about my story, how I came to Dubai, and how my photography changed when I came to Dubai. Then we'll go into the planning, how we look at planning a shoot, panning, so some of the techniques that we look at, and then we'll wrap up with workflow, inspiration, and other passions. Okay? So first of all, introduction. So as I said, my name's David Benson. I won't leave this image up there, scare you for too long. You have enough of me to look at. I came to Dubai back in 2011. So I've been here for, nearly 8 years. I started as a motorsport photographer. Okay, yeah. Started as a motorsport photographer back in probably 2006, 2005. For me, motorsport photography was a way to get into motorsport. I realized from a very, very young age that I was not fast enough to be a racing driver. I also learned that I wasn't willing to get my hands dirty enough to be a mechanic. I had friends who competed. The natural progression for me to get more involved in their competition was to attend the events that they were doing. Rallying in the UK is a big, big sport. My dad used to do it, my uncle used to do it, my granddad used to do it, my friends used to do it. So naturally for me, my home in the UK was always in the forests and on the gravel roads around Wales. The nice thing about rally photography is that you don't know what's going to happen. You can walk for miles and miles and miles through a wet Welsh forest, absolutely no idea what's going to come up. Apart from studying some maps, you don't know until you've walked around the next corner. There's always that desire and drive to just see what is around that next corner. The other challenge we face as rally photographers in particular, you only get one shot at capturing that car round that corner. You have to be very, very aware of your settings. You have to be very, very aware of your surroundings. It's not like a racetrack. It's not like Dubai Autodrome or Yas Marina Circuit, where you have these high catch fences, you have big Armco and tire barriers. There is very little between you and the car. So again, anything can happen. We'll talk about the safety of motorsport a little bit later on. So when we look at rally photography in particular, it's always about trying to create something and trying to capture something that's a little bit more dynamic. It's not just a big picture of a car on a gravel stage, on a tarmac stage. So capturing the colors as the seasons change. We have seasons in the UK, something we don't have here too much. So during winter, it's very gray, it's very brown, it's very dark. Then when we move into spring, you get a lot more greens, you get a lot more yellows, a lot more whites as you get the blossoms. Summer, you get the blues, you get the bright sunshine, but with the summer also comes the dust, especially in dry Welsh forests. And then in autumn, you get the oranges, and you get, again, heading into brown and winter again. So it's about creating something that is more than just the car. For me, I always went out with really a view to capture rallying as more than just a car and a stage. It's about showing the landscape. We went to some incredible places while shooting rally photography, not just in the UK, but around the world. And it's how you capture that just as a landscape. I mean, this, as a landscape shot, is more than just a car. So then you've got the people. When you start moving into WRC, you get a lot more people, you get a lot more interaction with crowds. So this is Rally of France back in 2010. You'll see all of this is before I moved to Dubai. This is where I really started. I'd never stepped foot on a racetrack before I moved to Dubai. It's not about freezing the action. So this is rally photography, motorsport photography in general. You want to create that sense of motion. You want to create that sense of speed. How you do that is lowering your shutter speed, is using the lines of the road, using the surroundings to create that, having the car draw you into the image. And then the action. Something we don't have too much of on racetracks are cars airborne, cars flying towards you. Again, it goes back to the whole safety element. Making sure that you're aware of your surroundings. You always have an exit route. You know, these cars are doing 120, 150 kilometers per hour at times. You need to be sure of where you can go when something does go wrong, not if. So a rare sunny day in the UK. And again, just using that slow shutter speed, using the colors, the contrast between the reds, the greens, and the blues to break the image up. It's not just about an image of a car. And this is so often the case with motorsport photography, that people just focus on the car. They focus on the driver. They focus on that one particular element, but it's much more than that. And for me, this is why my passion for rally photography took me so far, because it was always about the bigger picture. My gear when shooting rally photography was generally a 16 to 35, a 24 to 70, and at a push, 70 to 200. Never did I have the need for a 300, 400, 500, 600 mil lens. Such a big telephoto is not really needed. Cars move so fast, they change direction so rapidly, lugging a big camera around really doesn't pay off. Using the weather to your benefit is big in rally photography. You need to make sure that you're aware of the conditions, how they change. What you don't want to be is carrying 20, 30, 40,000 dirhams worth of kit, be caught in a rainstorm and lose it all to the elements. No matter how good a lot of these brands' weather sealing is, when there's a torrential downpour, it will always work its way into the camera. I have lost cameras before due to weather. We're talking professional bodies, big full-frame cameras that have been destroyed because of the weather. So when it comes to processing, when it comes to shooting, it's about looking at how you can use that weather to create the most dynamic image. When it's gray, when it's overcast, looking at black and white, it's not a typical processing technique for rally photography, especially when you look at press stuff, which a lot of my stuff used to be. I used to shoot for teams, I used to shoot for drivers. They want color photos to print in the newspaper, to go with a press release about a particular driver or a particular event. But for portfolio, for the storytelling side of it, you can be a little bit more creative and you can use alternative processing techniques. There's not always a car in the photo. Again, on those rare sunny days that we do get in the UK, things become very dusty. Things become very, very dry. It adds another challenge to whatever you're shooting. It's the case, I'll show you, there'll be a little bit further on, some stuff in Dubai that's very similar on the rally side of it here. And then it's the elements. So this was Isle of Man, the Manx. Who knows Isle of Man? Who knows the TT and different events like that? Okay. So this was a water splash on the Isle of Man. Again, using the elements that are available to you to create something different, something dynamic. Rear curtain flash, off-camera flash as well. Lower shutter speed to freeze the car, but create the movement around it. Again, the reds, the greens, the grays, the contrast, and the color really pops out of that image. I could have shown you 10, 12 other cars in the same shot, but they would not have worked anywhere near as well as the red. When you start looking at blues, they really just blend into the background. So 2011, I started coming to Dubai. I moved here full-time, beginning of 2012. Dubai was a massive transition for me. I never stepped foot on a racetrack as a photographer. I had no idea what I was getting myself in for. So when I came to Dubai, I started talking to some media outlets about how I can continue my photography. Rallying here is non-existent at best. It's becoming a little bit more prevalent now. We've got some fantastic desert championships. We've got the UAE Desert Championship. We've got Abu Dhabi Desert Challenge. We've got the Dubai International Baja, which actually replaced the Dubai International Rally. But still, we're talking 5, 6 events a year at the most. So for me, coming to Dubai and putting down my camera was not an option. I wanted to be involved in motorsport. I wanted to continue having that hobby and that passion, that escape from the real world, that escape from work, the 9 to 5. So just a little bit of background. I have worked full-time, freelance. I've worked part-time, freelance. So working as a photographer during my spare time, but also working as a photographer full-time, dedicated to just photography. It is difficult. It is incredibly difficult. With any freelance, especially creative, you find a niche, and you work towards fulfilling that as a full-time passion and a full-time career. With things like motorsport, you're so restricted by the calendar. In the UK, the calendar is April to October for circuit racing, for example. Here, it's October to April. So there's never really a guaranteed source of work when you just dedicate your time to motorsport photography for the entire year. So what I did, I branched out. I was always quite good at writing, so I went out and I wrote. I created press releases, I did sponsorship plans, and worked to get a lot of competitors in the UK recognized internationally. I was very lucky to work with some big brands, some big teams, some big manufacturers, create sponsorship revenue for them. And then when I came to Dubai, you have to start again. So, as I said, I started speaking to some of the media outlets. About what opportunities and what are the routes into motorsport photography here. One thing I very quickly realized is that the standard of photography here was very low. The expectation, from a motorsport perspective, the expectation as well was very low. The teams are grassroots teams. They're people who've built cars in their garages, very similar to the UK. They're people who spend a fraction of their income on racing. They don't want to spend that money on images. They'd much rather make their car go faster. They'd much rather make sure they have some new tires for the next event. And I can't blame them for that. I really don't blame them. So what I looked at doing is creating a portfolio for myself, working with a lot of these teams and working with a lot of the media outlets as a win-win situation. For me, portfolio, for them, content. I'll be very, very honest. I work for free. A lot of photographers, myself included, get very annoyed at people who will work for free. But it's not about necessarily it being free. It's about the relationship, and it's about value for both parties. For me, the value was access. For me, the value was my portfolio. And then the ability to go out and pitch for business in the future. I was very lucky it worked for me. And I, again, have been privileged to work with some fantastic manufacturers here and internationally, based on the work that I did when I first moved over here 2011, 2012, 2013. So it's got to be a relationship. And now I do give other photographers opportunities. So I get work and I get invited to come to shoots that I can't fulfill. So I will look at other photographers, not necessarily young photographers, established photographers as well, and share that wealth. We are all a community. The motorsport and automotive community here as well is a particularly small pool, and a small pool of photographers that I would trust to hand over to some of my clients. And again, that relationship works for me, where other photographers come to me and they ask me to shoot for their clients when they can't. So, one thing I didn't ask, actually I did mean to ask, just to gauge the room, who here is interested in motorsport? Who here is here because it's a motorsport workshop? Okay, who here is here because it's a photography workshop? Okay, who is because it's a motorsport photography workshop? Okay. Okay, that's good to know. So the majority of people here then are here because just the photography, which is great, because what I'm going to do later is I'm going to look at some of the skills that you can pick up that will hopefully help you think about your general photography, your day-to-day photography, some of the techniques when it comes to shooting, especially moving subjects, how you don't always want to freeze them, how you want to create that motion and that dynamism in the image. So when I came to Dubai, when I came to the UAE for the first time, and I realized I've got to go to a racetrack. If I want to continue motorsport photography, I've got to go to a racetrack and I've got to shoot a car that will come past me 30 times. A completely alien concept to me. At the same time, something that will allow you, and it allows me, to be a little more creative, to spend a little bit more time thinking about the shot that I want to capture and trying different things. The challenge with that is you can spend a long, long, long time in one location and spend a 30-minute race or a 1-hour race and get 2 photos from each car. If you're shooting for a client, that's not what they want. If you're shooting for a client, a 1-hour race, you should be able to deliver 20 completely different, unique photos to them after that race. So you have your own challenges. You have to walk a lot, same as rallying. You have to move around. You have to always think and review your photos to make sure you're not capturing the same photo again and again and again. The car's moving from left to right. The car's moving from right to left. The car's moving towards you, away from you. Lots of different things that you need to think about to give a completely diverse and wide range of photos to your client. So you can see, this is just around the paddock, you can see 2 completely different shots from the same location. just waiting a little bit longer for the car to come down a ramp, shooting with a slow shutter speed, compared to shooting it very, very early and shooting it with a very high shutter speed. It's completely two unique, different shots. And then in the garage. So this, again, is a completely new skill that I had to pick up and I had to think about. Race photography is not like rally photography. Rally photography, you get one shot at getting that car around that corner. Race photography is not just about the race. Rally photography, you'll be 30, 40, 50 miles away from where they're servicing the cars, away from where the mechanics are working on the cars and repairing the cars. You're not able to go walk 5, 6, 7 kilometers into a stage, take the photo, and then get back to where they're repairing the car. So you've got to think about how you break up your time to get the people side of it and the car side of it. For me, it was always about the cars. When it came to race photography, it's not. The teams want photos of the teams. It's not just the driver. It's not just a co-driver. It's an entire family that works on these cars. So you have to dedicate your time. Thing that we have a few, we're actually very lucky here in the UAE. We have 3 big races that take place at night. We have the Dubai 24 Hours at the Autodrome in January. We have the Gulf 12 Hours, which was last weekend at Yas Marina Circuit. And we have the Abu Dhabi F1. Very lucky to have opportunities to shoot at night. And then how you use that, how you create something slightly different with that is up to you. So again, using off-camera flash, using slow shutter speeds. How you use the weather. Again, very, very lucky here to get beautiful sunsets most of the year, beautiful sunrises most of the year. In the UK, yeah, we do get sunrises. We do get nice color in the sky when it's not too cloudy. This, I'll be very honest, this is one of my favorite all-time photos. I walked about 4 kilometers, 5 kilometers into a stage at 5 o'clock in the morning when it was absolutely pitch black. This was the last WRC event I ever shot. I haven't shot another one since. This was 2011. So just the color, the action, the road, the composition. For me, this is the pinnacle of rally photography and my personal photography, all-time favorite. It's just one of those shots that I keep on looking back at. It's all subjective. I don't expect anyone here will be thinking, that's nice, but it's nothing particularly fantastic. Subjectively, for me, it has all those elements that I look for in a rally photograph, apart from maybe a crowd. But we don't get too many crowds out in the UK, especially that early in the morning. So before rallying died in the UAE, we had the Dubai International Rally. It was part of the Middle East Rally Championship. It was not like a rally that we had in the UK. If you've been out around the back of Sharpness, if you've been out to the Madame Plain, places like that, you'll realize the road network is pretty vague, especially when we get off-road. You don't get a road book like you get in the UK. The road book in the UK for rallying tells you exactly where the cars will go when. It gives you a list of diagrams that they call tulips. Tulips tell you how each junction looks, and after how long between the junctions is the next one. So you can gauge where you need to go. In Dubai, you don't have that. You don't have high visibility vests. You don't have media passes. You don't need special access to get onto a stage, anything like that. It is a free-for-all. But that also creates some unique opportunities because you can drive the stages, which you can't in the UK so often, and you can find new, unique, interesting places. And for me, with no one around. That is perfect. No one around. So this was Dubai International Rally, and there's not many places you can go in the world and get a shot like this that, to this day, I've never seen anyone else capture. I've never seen anyone else go to this location and shoot these shots. It was just luck. It was just luck that I stumbled upon this place, and not only for the framing, but for the action. So quite a few of the cars were getting airborne as they were coming power sliding around the corner. Was just that. We'll show a couple of videos, and they all talk about, from different photographers, they all talk about how rally photography, motorsport photography in general, a lot of it comes down to luck. You can plan and you can plan and you can plan, but ultimately you're at the mercy of the drivers and the cars, and them creating spectacular action for you. It's not just rally. Unfortunately, the XFighters is another event that has suffered in Dubai and has not come back, but just great, unique opportunities. 2013, so I've been in Dubai a couple of years by now. My images were getting recognized, and I was invited to come and shoot. So a paid gig, very fortunate to get the opportunity to attend as media, which, unless they knocked down somebody's building, because it was in downtown somewhere. Yeah, it was just behind. Unless they knock down some of these buildings, we won't have an event like this again here. Dubai, the UAE, I keep on referring to Dubai, but the UAE has some interesting sports as well. So who's been to Al Quwain Motorplex? Yes? Yeah, 2 people. Okay. Go down to Al Quwain Motorplex. It's interesting not just from the cars, but it's interesting from the people. It's a different culture. It's a different world. Friday nights, it will be packed. From sand drag racing through to freestyle drift to normal drag racing to solo events, desert rallies. They do everything down there. It is a bespoke facility. It costs 30 dirhams plus VAT to get in. So it's a cheap night out. I took my wife once, and she couldn't believe the amount of people down there. She's never been again, but she came once. Anyway, so we don't have cars like this in the UK. We don't have cars like this in Europe. So coming here gave me an opportunity to find these different forms of motorsport and to capture something a little bit different, something that is so grassroots, that is almost bordering on underground, that I can go and shoot, and to a mainly European audience, I can post. And I can promote these kinds of events and just make people realize that it's not all about the F1 at Abu Dhabi. It's not all about the Dubai 24 hours at the Autodrome. It's much, much, much more, and much more grassroots. You know, these things have got 1,500 plus horsepower with nitrous, and they make lots of bangs. Half of the time, they don't even get off the start line. But that's not the point. So again, it really, really upsets me that we lost the Dubai International Rally. We only had one round a year in the UAE. Abu Dhabi had a go back in 2014, I think. They had a go at starting their own rally, which ran once, and then, again, it never came back, and it never happened again. So for something like this, you've got to be prepared. Not everything needs to be shot at a slow shutter speed. So this is quite a high shutter speed to get that, freeze that movement through the wheel. There is a car in there, you can just about see it. And again, it kind of tells a story, and it tells much more than just having a photo of a car. 2012 Dubai International Rally. I can remember this one because driving back through from Malaya through the desert, and it absolutely chucked it down with rain. I thought, this isn't the UK. It's not meant to rain here. It's not meant to rain like this. So we had big, big floods that year, I can remember. Again, the rallying. People, something we don't often see on the rally. Anyway, if anyone from the FIA, Mohammed bin Sulayem, anyone is listening, please bring back some rallying. Please bring back some proper WRC rallying. There's enough cars here that people can drive. please. Who's been to Liwa? Who's been to the Liwa Festival? So that starts just after Christmas and runs through to the 4th of January. 1,500 horsepower, turbocharged V8, V10, Funkos, sand rails, whatever you want to call them. These things, you have to see them to believe them. They spend most of their time on 2 wheels, just on the back wheel. Great, great, great fun. But again, another opportunity to shoot something a little bit different, shoot something at night. If you get the chance, go down to Liwa. I'll be down there on the Friday night. So the Friday, the 4th of January is the final for the Liwa Festival. It's when they do the drag racing up for June for 6-cylinder, 8-cylinder turbo 4-wheel drive. Go down. Go and check it out. It's a long old drive, but it's worth it. Half of the GCC moves to Liwa during the festival. There must be 20,000 people down there easily. And camps spread all the way over Nazira and the whole area down there. A little bit more rallying. It's about framing. It's about looking at what is around, and it's not just, again, not just a photo of a car. It's using the light, it's using the elements. So again, just a very lucky find. It was luck that drew me to this place. So I knew that the cars were starting any minute. I could see a cloud of dust a couple of kilometers away at the other side of the plane. So, well, I've got to find somewhere, otherwise I'm going to miss the first couple of cars. So just stumbled across this one. So photographing people was new to me. Coming from a rally background, suddenly you're shooting for teams who want more than just photos of cars on track. They want to see the people. They want to see the drivers. And not just to the teams, to the media. The media are often talking about the driver. There's a wider story there. A driver is entering a new car, or he's in a new team, he's in a new race, he's in a new championship. So capturing some creative shots of drivers, capturing some creative shots of mechanics of the team. Everything I shoot on a track is candid. 99.9%, sometimes a team will have a specific requirement that will need me to ask, if you just wait there 1 second. 99%, 99.9% is candid. There is no lighting, there is no strobe, there is no flash. It's all natural, and then it's only very lightly processed in Lightroom, just for levels and balances. So, grab shots. Just, you know, you take, digital memory costs nothing, and this is what I always remember. I started off on film. I picked up my dad's old Pentax back in, I was probably this big, and used to shoot film, 24 frames, and that was it. And that was a lot of money to save up for the film, but even more to save up for the processing. This was before rally photography. This was just life. This was just going around, taking photos, learning the skills, learning about exposure and about aperture and shutter speed, learning about ISO and the ISO sensitivity of film. Now, we're able to shoot thousands, tens of thousands of images at very little cost. A memory card, 128 gigabyte memory card costs 300, 400 dirhams for an SD card. Very, very little. So there's nothing stopping you going and trying, just shooting and having a look at how different compositions work. Getting low, shooting high, shooting slow, shooting fast. Nothing stopping you taking that apart from the requirement for extra storage. I have, so when I was preparing for this workshop, I have probably a 3 or 4 terabyte drive for every single year since 2011. Connecting every single year's hard drive up to my computer to go back and to find all these photos, it was great. It was really, really nice for me to be able to go back at photos that I'd forgotten about. And that's one of the things that we also forget with digital and shooting so much is we have all these photos, and we're so consumed with what is happening then that we don't often look back. This photo, the wife of the mechanic, so the mechanic has actually become a good friend of mine since taking this photo. His wife bought a copy. He liked it so much. It was just such a simple photo. For me, it was just snap, forgot about. But for him, it was so much more than just that click. It tells a story. It's him in charge. It's his car. He's the chief mechanic. He's in charge. So for us, we can forget that it's more than just a person and a car. Commercial side. So it's not just race cars. It's also getting stuff for manufacturers. And how you create something that's a little bit more interesting than just the standard car, 3/4 from the front corner. Something that they can use, but also giving it space. So if it's for editorial, if it's for commercial usage, brochures, giving it some space around so you can put in content, you can put in copy. So that's something I also had to start thinking about when coming to the UAE and shooting race stuff. It's not, and commercial stuff. It's not just, again, about the car. It's about a much bigger picture. And then this is something I never do, taking photos of cars that don't move. So another new skill, and I will be very, very, very honest, I'm still not very good at it. There are some fantastic photographers, Malik Fioumi, Aaron Nair, people who shoot for Crank and Piston, Awesome Group. You know, these are fantastic photographers here. Chan Kamal as well. They know their work. I'm not even going to try and emulate them. They can shoot static and moving photos, but they can shoot cars like no one's business. So I don't do this very often. You don't need to worry about that. And again, how you use light, how you use motion to create something. Something that we don't get to do so much in rally photography is shoot at really slow shutter speeds. So I had the photo earlier of a motorbike at the XFighters. It's very difficult to shoot these subjects at slow shutter speeds. It's not like a race car. That car, you know, will move from right to left. Nice, smooth tarmac. With a rally car, yeah, it will move from right to left, but it will be a bumpy road. So not only will the car come from right to left, it will also be moving up and down as it does that, as it goes over bumps. So when you introduce a slow shutter speed, suddenly your panning, which is on one level, doesn't capture that very well. So you get a blurry photo. So you don't shoot at particularly slow shutter speeds with rally. Starting with circuit photography gave me an opportunity to start messing around with slower and slower shutter speeds. So we'll come to some stuff later that's like crazy slow, a half of a second, an eighth of a second, things like that. And again, this is an eighth of a second. One thing that I still struggle to get my head around, and people tell me it's okay, is critical sharpness. For motorsport photography, it's not always about having that car front to back completely sharp. It's about having an element. It's about having parts of the car. So here you can clearly make out it's a Ferrari. You can clearly make out the Etihad branding. You can clearly make out it's on a racetrack and you've got lights. There's no reason to get obsessed with having that car completely sharp front to back. There's a difference between sharpness and out of focus. If it's out of focus, even if it wasn't sharp, you'd be able to tell if it was out of focus. That is in focus, but not sharp. So it's understanding the difference between focus and sharpness when it comes to especially the slow shutter speed stuff. Light. We're blessed with some fantastic light, especially during the winter. We do get some incredible sunsets. We do get some incredible sunrises. It's not about just ramping up the white balance to create the oranges. It's about getting it right in the camera. It's about using the settings and the exposure in the camera. So this has had very little. You can see from the color of the green. You can see from the color of the car. This is in camera. This isn't just white balance. This isn't just changing the tones of highlights. This is the sun at its very best. So finding the right times of day and the right location to go ahead and shoot these shots. Freezing action. Things in the pit lane move very, very fast at Dubai 24 hours. You have now over 100 cars that take part and about 28 pit garages. So you have 3 to 4 cars per garage. They're all vying for valuable space to service their cars. You've got to keep your wits about you in the pit lane. But at the same time, you've got some fantastic opportunities. They set up lights for you. Well, for them, I like to think it's for me. They set up lights so that you can create some different, unique shots. ISOs get pushed, so 3200, 6400 ISO, but definitely worth it. And then the people. So one thing that I'm probably most grateful for that 2011, 2012, I decided not to give up on motorsport photography when I moved here. I decided to give it a go. I decided to start shooting at racetracks. I've been very privileged to shoot F1 now for the last 4 years, 5 years if you include Bahrain. So I've not only been shooting in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, I've managed to be able to travel to other races. I want to shoot more. Someone needs to pay for me nowadays. Hopefully that will happen. But F1 is another world. It's, they talk about the circus. It rolls into town. It sets up shop for a week. It takes over. Everyone talks about it. It packs up and it goes. The vibe in an F1 paddock is like nothing else during a race weekend. I've been fortunate to experience this. There's a lot of people who are very humble. It's not just the glamour. It's not just the super rich. It's not just the yachts and the fast cars. A lot of the drivers are very, very approachable. A lot of the teams are very, very approachable. And again, when you are involved in the sport and when you start embedding yourself with a lot of teams, you'll find that actually you get invited. And come down, take this photo, come and see this guy, come and meet this driver, just take a couple of photos. You know, it's a very nice family. Some of the most prolific around in that paddock for 30 years, probably more. Again, very approachable guys. They've worked with a lot of my friends. They've worked with a lot of people I know. They're always looking for someone who can shoot something else for them. Niki Lauda. So again, it's about the story. It's not just a photo of a person. You've got the Mercedes branding behind. You've got much more than just that person. It's a little bit more of a story. Sometimes they pose. You don't have much of a choice when they see the camera pointing at them and they want to smile. It's not my personal style of photography, but it works. And the light, this again is not lit. This is purely a very, very dark pit garage behind. Just a little bit of light falling on the drivers as they're doing autograph signing sessions for the public. This is WC in Bahrain a couple of years ago. Back here, circuit. So you're always chasing that light. When we go into a lot of my more recent stuff, you'll see how it's always trying to find light and dark. It's always trying to find shadows. It's not necessarily about going silly low on shutter speeds anymore. It's about creating a unique shot that is only available at that time, because in 10 minutes the sun would have moved and that light would have disappeared. Just those nice moments. So this was Jenson Button, his last race in Abu Dhabi a few years ago, heading back into the garage, thanking all of his mechanics, all of the team for the hard work that they've done over years and years to get him a world championship, or he won the world championship with Braun, but as a racing driver, just thanking his team. Luck. This wasn't planned, apart from within the McLaren garage. They hadn't announced to photographers that they were going to do this. You had no idea which direction he was going to come from. It was just by luck that you see the moment unfolding before you. You see all the mechanics lining up. You start to hear the whispers. And again, it helps when you have your ear to the ground during motorsport season, when you have your ears to the ground during an event, that you start to realize that something's going to happen. You start to speak to the mechanics, and then, just by luck, you grab a shot. McLaren used this shot somewhere. I can't think exactly where. But, you know, it gets picked up because you're the only photographer there. This is all you need, really, sometimes in motorsport photography, just to be at that place at the right time and capture something that no one else captures. I shot something back in 2010 at the Goodwood Festival of Speed. I'm trying to think who it was. It was celebrity. Liz Hurley and Australian cricketer captain. I can't think what his name is. But again, I was the only photographer there at that time. I think it was Mark Webber. Only photographer there at that time to take that shot. That went across all the, it's a paparazzi shot. I'm not proud of it, but it went across all the newspapers. And suddenly, I have royalties coming in. I have money coming in from a shot, from an event that I wasn't otherwise getting paid to be at. So you've got to spend money to make money. You know, I spent the money getting down to Goodwood. It was a good 4 hours drive. I'd spent the money on a campsite. I stayed in a tent for a couple of nights because I couldn't afford a hotel. But suddenly, I was making money. This is when I was freelance, and this is when it was difficult. And sometimes you just had to go to these events and hope that you get something. Looking at different ways to capture the people. It's not always about a photo of a person with his helmet on, a photo of a person through a window. It's something slightly different. It's the focus on that person. Looking for these different opportunities is not a unique or new technique. I've seen lots of shots, but it's having the light. Luckily, the light was coming in through the front of the garage. Having the time. They were just about to push the car out. I just managed to kneel down just behind the front door and shoot that straight into the car. So, again, positioning, knowing how a team works and how a team moves. A couple of years ago, I shot, last year, in fact, this year, I shot Dubai 24 hours from a completely new perspective. I was asked by the organizers not to shoot anything on track, just to focus on the color and the people in the garages. So it gave me an opportunity. It was actually really, really nice to not have to think about going out on track, carrying 400, 500, 600 mil lenses, carrying 15 kilos and walking God knows how many kilometers. Just being focused on walking up and down a pit lane. I probably covered just as many miles walking up and down the pit lane as I would doing trackside photography. But what I also trialed with this event was processing. I processed everything on an iPad. Because I'm not shooting 20 frames per second, because I'm shooting much slower, single shots, 2, 3 shots, you're able to be much more selective with what you process, what you put on your computer and how you look at that. My workflow had to change completely. I'll be honest, I haven't shot and processed another event on an iPad since. I probably won't. I still don't think they are there as a tool compared to a computer, especially for my style of photography. Maybe travel photography, yes. Maybe street photography, yes, where you're taking many fewer images during an event. I also have to be mindful of how I need to deliver the images to the clients. So clients want images across WeTransfer. Clients want images uploaded straight into SharePoint drives or into WeTransfer. You know, the technology with the iPad still isn't there that I can export multiple sizes. Some people want 1,000 pixels at a 72 DPI. Some people want 5,000 pixels at 300 DPI. So, you know, there's still a long way to go until iPads, tablets in general become viable replacements for computers for my style of photography. One of those, again, rare opportunities where it's a setup shot. It's not candid. It's not on a racetrack. This is purely, I have the driver in the car. I'm on the radio to him. I'm telling him what speed to drive. I'm telling him where to position his car to get the best for my client. So they spend a lot of money on hiring the tracks. We have a very short period of time to get these shots. So you have to be very clear in the brief. You have to be very clear in visualizing your outcome. What do you want to get from these 20 minutes? So you probably see I've got a little bit of a mark on my elbow and on the other from shooting something very similar to this weekend. You are strapped in but hanging out the back of a car in front, traveling at 100, 120 kilometers per hour around a racetrack, trying to get as many photos as you can so you know you get one shot or two shots. You're shooting at shutter speeds around a 30th of a second while being bounced over curbs. This weekend I was, I guess, unfortunate to have the driver driving the car I was in as a race driver. He wants to hit every apex. He wants to hit every curb, but he doesn't see me in the back of the car going from one side to the other side, hence holding on for dear life while keeping two cameras. Yeah. Again, like, you know, Dubai Autodrome is, we've been so lucky with having some incredible sunsets. A couple of years ago, for 2 years, we had no sunset whatsoever over a 4-day. So you've got to remember, Dubai Autodrome, the 24 hours at Dubai is not a 24-hour race. It's 4 days. The race starts at 2 o'clock on the Friday afternoon, finishes at 2 o'clock on the Saturday afternoon. As a photographer, you are there from 8 o'clock on the Friday morning until 4 or 5 o'clock on the Saturday afternoon. You have to do all the build-up. You have to do all the preparation. You have to then deliver albums of images to all your clients before the end of the day after the race so they can get them out to the press, so they can get them out on social media. You've also then got all the testing and all the qualifying that happens a couple of days before. So you can wipe out 4 days of your life to catch a 24-hour race. Golf 12 hours last weekend, shooting for 14s. 4 days of my life gone. 7 a.m. starting, 9, 10 p.m. finishing. No, very, very long day. Apart from race day, starting at 7 a.m., finishing, I got home 4 a.m. the next day. So it's 21-hour days. Shooting at a racetrack again and again and again. I tried to work out at the weekend how many times I shot at Yas Marina Circuit. I can't. It must be 50 plus. I can't think of many other photographers who've shot at Yas Marina Circuit more than I have. Maybe a guy called Darren Rycroft who used to shoot for the local racing championship. I think he's probably one of the few people who have shot more than I have, or Jorge Ferrari, if anyone knows Jorge. Trying to find something different is incredibly difficult. When you know you have an album of shots that you need, and then an album of shots that need to be different. So this was during F1 this year, last year. Everyone shoots from the balcony of the Yas Hotel to get the cars coming underneath them. But just hanging over and looking at a shot, I realized there was a reflection. It's taken a little bit of work. You can see here, you can just see some of the floorboards from where I was stood. So it's taken a little bit of processing. It's probably one of the few images that I'll spend more than 2 or 3 minutes on, just to try and cover those up a bit more. Something different, something unique, something that I have never seen anyone shoot before. But funnily enough, this year, something that I've seen a couple of people shoot. So it just goes to show that people do look at other people's work before going to a racetrack. Even F1 photographers, they look at what other people are shooting from racetracks. They look for these other opportunities. I do it. Pretty standard. So to capture sparks, people often say, how do you catch flames? How do you catch sparks? You need a high shutter speed, don't you, to freeze it? No, you need a slow shutter speed. A flame will come out of an exhaust over about 3/4 of a second. So you need a slow enough shutter speed to get that whole movement. Otherwise, you'll just get a tiny little puff. So you need something slow. These sparks, you can see, to get the line, the length of the spark, this is probably a 40th of a second, a 30th of a second. You need to shoot at a relatively slow shutter speed to get that movement through the spark, through the flame. You still have to shoot your standard stuff. Everyone still wants to see the standard stuff from a racetrack. If any publications want to write about the event, they don't just want unique, crazy, slow shutter speed, shadows. They want pretty standard stuff that is instantly recognizable as Yas Marina Circuit. But they still want the creative stuff. Again, the critical sharpness. So this is shooting through a frosted glass panel on the roof of the hotel. Something that I saw a couple of people doing this year, and something that I'd never really seen before. So it's quite nice to see that people obviously look at your work and take cues from you, take inspiration. Something from this year, Eurozide, is very, very apt. So again, something that is only really relevant to people in the UAE. It's not so much that people outside of the UAE are looking at Eurozide and will know what it is. So for me, for my client, this is quite an important shot. This really showcases it as a 2018 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. It's not from any year. And this is just from this weekend, so I just tried to incorporate some from the Golf 12 Hours. As I was saying earlier, using light, using shadow, using shutter speed. So processing on these are very, very minimal. Just reducing shadows, bringing blacks down a little bit, but shooting at the right time of the day. So you still have that slightly yellow glow. It's not blown out highlights or anything like that. Shooting at the right time of the day. It's a very well-known spot at Yas during sunset, and we were very lucky. We had one day during the Golf 12 Hours where we got a sunset. Despite my protest, the organizers always organize their schedule so that we never get to shoot during sunset. So we had, in fact, no, we had 2 sunsets this year. Over 4 days of racing, we had 2 sunsets. I'll just quickly, because I know you want to go for a break. Do you want to go for a break now? Yeah, okay. So we'll go for a break, and then we'll start talking about some of the planning and technique side of motorsport photography. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask me during the break. I have all my gear. We'll talk about gear later, but if anyone wants to have a look at what I shoot with. Thank you very much. Okay. It's good to see people came back. It's always nice not come back to an empty room. Okay. I didn't realize just how slow I was in the first half. I was expecting that to take maybe 30, 40 minutes. When HIPAA invited me and asked me to do a talk, and they said 2.5 hours, I was like, oh, am I going to fill that time? And now I'm suddenly rushing to fill a lot. So I'll go much quicker through the planning and the technique side of things now, and then move on to the workflow. I've had quite a few people ask me about how I go about processing and dealing with my images. So anyway, planning.
It's not just drivers, pit crews and fans that travel with the IMSA Sports Car Championship. Legions of media, camera crews and photographers work tirelessly to capture the moments unfolding. Getting the shot is just the start for freelance photographer Jamie Price.
I've been a racing fan since I was 11 years old, and it still gives me such a buzz just to be trackside and you feel the cars and just see all the fans. I love it because I'm still a racing fan at heart.
Working closely with professional athletes is part of the game, and Price has worked hard to form strong relationships with the drivers and their teams.
I've kind of shifted a little bit from loving shooting the cars more to loving shooting the people more. You get to know the drivers, which is really special. You can see who's in the car a lot of the time, especially when the light's right. So you can see that, you know, Tommy's in the car, Ollie's in the car. I can see that it's them at the wheel, and it makes it a little bit more fun. You bring that human element into it, and you can capture their personalities. They start to trust you as a photographer, as an artist, and it's kind of a really interesting mutual relationship and dynamic, and they're just going to let you do your thing because they trust you.
Good morning, Sebring!
The Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring in March is a favourite race among photographers due to changing light and challenging conditions.
We've had races here where it's been beautiful and sunny, and then all of a sudden it's raining and you have to have rain gear on you. You have to know what's coming. I have all the lenses that I could use, from a 500mm lens down to something really wide like a 14mm. I like showing that the cars are moving. I spend a lot of time panning at slow shutter speeds, which you get a lot of really cool colors. But I also love shooting those differences between light and dark, and shadow and bright sunlight. You can use that and really make something special where the car and the colors of the car really pop, because some of the cars are just super colorful, and that's a photographer's dream, is to have nice light with a colorful car like Corvette. You can show the cars on pit lane, and they stand out so much from everything else. You have the concrete that Sebring is known for, and with a bright yellow car, that really stands out. Some of the pit lane shots where you've got driver changes happening in the middle of the day, and you can see how hot it is, but you can also see the intensity and the motion. It's a high shutter speed photo, but you can see the drivers are moving, and the mechanics are moving, and everybody's got a job to do. And the whole thing just kind of meshes into a really powerful picture that's not just a car on pit lane. This is the heat of the moment. This is Sebring at its best.
For Price, the natural color palette on offer and the high-speed action allows him to get creative, whilst also providing editorially strong imagery for his clients.
Nighttime is so different than shooting in the day. You can't even necessarily see the color of the car coming from 180 miles an hour, bouncing around on the concrete slabs. And suddenly they're on the brakes, and there's just sparks and orange glow, and it's amazing. It's a very different experience to shooting in the middle of the day, and I don't know how these guys did it 40, 50 years ago, because I don't know that I've been able to do it.
A record crowd here at Sebring. Get your cameras out, it's going to be very pretty.
Sports photography is so competitive, but the reward is the chance to capture that special moment.
I think my favorite photo that I've probably ever taken was one of those that I just got lucky. I saw the car go off and knew where it was going to come back on. I dropped my lens, I picked up the 500, and it's all happening so fast. And the lens and the camera were in the right settings. and a lot of it's luck. You never know what you're going to get. I've got some amazing pictures from this race that have nothing to do with my talent, and there's so many talented photographers. You're literally competing against the best in the world. And it's not a competition. There's no winners and losers, but I'm going to look at their pictures and go, man, I wish I'd shot that.
Yeah, okay. That's the first time I've watched that video the whole way through. And I think Jamie really nails it. It's about luck. There are so many talented photographers out there that actually 9 times out of 10 it's about luck. I was speaking to a few people during the break who asked about what gear I used. I'll cover my gear in a bit. I am renowned for carrying too much. There's a balance between simplicity and there's a balance between having the right tools for the job. As a motorsport photographer, I can be walking around a racetrack for 4 or 5 hours at a time without having the ability to go back to the media center, without having the ability to go back, change lenses. So I know that I need to carry everything that I could possibly want during that 4 to 5 hour session, especially with endurance racing, 12 hours, 24-hour races. You don't want to be spending time in that pit lane, or sorry, in the media center. You want to be out there shooting as much as possible. So, motorsport is dangerous. This is something that I talk about when I run workshops about motorsport photography. This is something that is always really, really important. It's the first thing we go through, that expect the unexpected. Anything can happen. Know your surroundings. So when I was talking about rally photography, you always have to have an exit plan. Not so much at a racetrack, although there's still a risk of flying wheels and body parts and things like that. Car body parts, not human body parts. So you need to be aware of photos or checking Instagram or updating your Facebook status. You have to be there for a purpose, and you always have to be looking around where possible, especially during a workshop. If you come on my workshop, travel in pairs. If you're taking a photo, if you're low down and you're taking a photo but cars are approaching you from behind, have someone spot you so that you're not going to get run over, because they are high-pressure locations where teams are working around you, and you don't want to have a team working around you, because that will win you no friends. Just a few of the challenges when shooting at a racetrack: in a pit lane, fire, on a racetrack, cars going off. I mean, this one you can see, actually this guy down here at Le Mans, this is a famous crash maybe 6, 7 years ago. This guy, completely oblivious. We walk around with earplugs in. The race cars are so loud, you don't want to damage your hearing. So again, it's just kind of being aware as much as possible about what's going on around you. Who knows which circuits these are? Who can name this one? Hmm? Dubai. Yeah, yeah. So Yas Marina Circuit and Dubai. So when it comes to planning, look at the circuit maps, look at what other people have shot, and become familiar with how you move around a circuit. It's not just about what's happening around the outside. It's about how you can also shoot what's happening on the inside. So I was talking earlier about shooting cars that are moving left to right, right to left. It seems a pretty obvious comment, but actually it can be quite difficult. Yas runs counterclockwise. Yeah, counterclockwise. So you are always getting the cars coming from your left and traveling to your right, unless you can get somewhere where you are on the inside, or there's a few places under the bridge that you can get them traveling right to left. If you're going to give your client a full, broad portfolio of images, you need cars traveling in different directions, especially for people who are shooting video. You don't always want the car traveling through a video in the same direction. You want it traveling different directions. You want it traveling towards you or traveling away from you. When it comes to location planning during a shoot, it's the same as any other type of photography. It's nothing different. So I use the photographer's ephemeris, PPE, and photo pills. These are two apps that help me work out sunrise, sunset, location of sun. A lot of it comes down to experience. I know at Yas when it's sunset during an October event, that it's in a completely different place than sunset during a March event. During a March event, you remember the two photos that I showed earlier, the portrait photos of a Porsche going down the pit tunnel and a Ferrari. The Ferrari was in March, and the sun is above the pit lane. You don't get that sun during Formula One. So in November, you get that sun further over to the west, so off to the left-hand side. So use the same tools as when you were, as if you're shooting any other subject, any other landscape photography, any other photography where light is important. On Google, that's me. Oh well. Just a quick Google about Dubai auto drone photography. And this is what it brought up. And actually, most of these photos are my photos. Have a look at what other people shoot. And as I said earlier, it's quite nice that I've been to Yas this year and post F1 this year. I've seen a lot of people who have shot similar photos to what I shot last year. I'm not saying that they have necessarily seen my photo and thought, I want to copy that, but the thought process between other photographers is the same. Maybe they've taken inspiration from something I shot. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just luck that they've been and shot something else. Happened at the Golf 12 Hours last weekend. I shot something that I'd never seen anyone shoot before, a shot that I sent to a client, and the next day I saw another photographer who posted a pretty much identical shot. Started, oh, he's just been following me around, copying me, because it does happen. People follow you around to copy you. People don't have their own creativity all the time, so people want to see what you shoot and just take that same photo. Turns out, no, just by chance, he'd seen exactly the same as what I had seen in a completely obscure location that you wouldn't always think, oh, there's a shot there. Oh, yeah. It just happens like that. This is what we get when we go to a race weekend. This is the schedule. This is how you know where you need to be, when you need to be there. You need to look at this. You need to study this. You need to plan your day. It is no good going into a race weekend without knowing when the races start, when the races finish. If you want to shoot pit lane, you need to be back in the pit lane for when the cars are there. It's no good getting there 10 minutes after the cars have arrived. The mechanics have already done what they need to do, and the car is already heading back out onto the circuit. There's a lot of planning that goes into a race weekend before you've even taken a photo. So again, as I mentioned, I do run, I haven't done for a while, and I don't know when I'll run the next one. I do run an introduction to motorsport photography workshop. I'm very pleased and proud to have worked with Dubai Autodrome and Yas Marina Circuit and run these workshops in the past. This is a general brief that I give everyone when they come onto a workshop. I don't just take them there, show them how to shoot photos and let them leave. I give them a real world brief. This is what a team or a championship would expect. They want a variety of shots. They want shots throughout the day. They want delivery during the day. People, cars, and something creative. And deadline. Most important thing is we always have a deadline. And as I said, Golf 12 Hours on Saturday. The race finished at 11:30 p.m. The podium was 11:50 p.m. I finished delivering my images by 3 a.m. Don't get to leave until the client has all my images, because once 9 a.m. reaches the next morning, the press releases have all been sent out and you've missed the deadline. If you haven't submitted your images, the news cycle is gone. You're then in next day's news cycle. So the kit that I use, I've shot with Canon, I've shot with Nikon, and now I'm shooting with Sony. My reason for moving to Sony is weight. It's quite simple. I've been with Nikon for 10 years, 9 years, 8, 9 years, something like that. And I've been shooting with D4S, D800, shooting long endurance races, shooting F1, shooting with 400mm 2.8, shooting with a 600mm f4, a 200 f2. These are heavy lenses. You're walking around for hours and hours a day. I had a bad back. It was quite simple, and you are killing yourself walking around with a lens and a body over one shoulder, and then one hanging from a strap on this side and a hanging from a strap, and you're constantly moving around it. You're finishing a session. You've still got 3 days more to go. You're finishing a session, and you'll just lay down thinking, I can't stand back up. Weight was the big, big deciding factor for me to say, you know what, they've had their chance. Sony have been around for quite a while. They had the A7, they had the A7R, the A7S, and then they brought out the A9. I picked up an A9. I went out and shot. 20 frames per second I thought was ridiculous. Why would anyone need 20 frames per second? I do sometimes still think that 20 frames per second is completely over the top. However, there are certain times with race photography where you want that speed. For a start, for a time where there is movement within a car, where it's bouncing over curbs, things like that, hitting apexes, you want a little bit more speed, and you want to capture that car at a specific moment. Sometimes 8, 9, 10 frames won't get you. Generally, I switch my camera to 10 frames per second. Only when I need those extra frames will I move to 20 frames. The 400mm 2.8 from Sony, I know quite a few people have come down and picked it up. You've got to pick it up to believe it. You've got to feel the weight of it, especially with an A9 body. You've got to feel the weight of it to believe it. The package is half the weight of my 600mm without a body, without the Nikon 600mm, without a body. Being able to travel with it is fantastic. Going to Bahrain, for example, it was always roulette, it was always gambling whether you would lose your lens into the hole. You don't want to put glass in a hole, trust me, of any airline. You have 20 kilos of hand luggage. Some airlines weigh that hand luggage, and they do not want to let you on a plane with 20 kilos. Now, I can get my gear down to 10 kilos. It's just that much better. The only thing that I do miss from Nikon going to Sony is the 200 f2. I really, really want that lens, and hopefully they'll bring it out sometime. It's a big old beast, but the images from my old Nikon version were incredible. Hopefully there'll be something that can come close to that soon. With the 400, I generally use a monopod. It just helps create a very smooth motion when it comes to panning. With everything else, it's all handheld. Even with the 400mm, sometimes it's handheld. Sometimes the monopod does get in the way. Luckily, just over 3 kilos for the body and the lens, it's more than handholdable.
Really excited about trying this 400mm for the first time this weekend at Dubai Autodrome. It's 35 degrees outside, it's about 70% humidity. This is going to be a real test for just how good and how well performing this lens will be. This new 400mm 2.8 Sony lens is incredible. Such a light package is unheard of in the industry, and is really going to be a game changer for someone like me and for other professional sports photographers who are on their feet constantly throughout the day. But not just is it light, it's also perfectly well balanced on the A9 body. It's just gonna revolutionize how you shoot and how long you can shoot. You can just pick it up and you can feel just how much better balanced it is. I'm really excited to get out on track here at Dubai Autodrome to give this new lens to the market a real run through to see just how well it performs. You know, first expectations are very, very high, and it gives us a real ability to shoot long distance, to shoot fast, high precision, autofocus, and an incredibly light package. My name's David Benson. I'm a Sony ambassador, and we're here today at Dubai Autodrome to launch the new UAE Motorsport season and to give the Sony 400mm 2.8 its first run in the region, together with the Sony Alpha A9.
My name is Marcelo Maranhi. I'm from São Paulo, Brazil. I'm a photographer and my passion is adventure.
Packing everything to start to find the shooting spot.
Finding the right spot is really difficult because we don't have so many information from the organization. But as soon as they give us some waypoints, I have to check in the maps. I have some app to see the roads, the local roads. If I have internet, I can search on the Google Earth to see how's the spot, how's around the spot. And I follow the road book. The most important thing is to read the road book carefully and to understand the draws on the road book.
My idea is to go to this point where they leave the beach and maybe go a little bit more into the stage to see, because after the beach they will go to a dry river and I want to see how it looks.
The Dakar Rally is like 10% photography and 90% being in the right spot, dealing with the problems you find in the road, doing off-road drive, and sleeping short, have long travels, and it's about surviving, 90% about being in a good health, in a good mood to shoot. The other 10% is photography.
Nice stuff. Today we had a different start, had 10 or 15 bikers starting together. So most of my riders already passed and I need just to wait for 2 or 3 more and I'm done. It's funny because you do a lot of stuff, a lot of hours for 10 minutes work.
This is the Red Bull Content Pool Land Rover. This is my home base for the 15 days of the car. This is my baby. This is the satellite. The satellite device, the Inmarsat one. I can use the internet wherever I am.
Fill all metadata which is the information about the shot, who is riding, where and when. So I have presets for everything to make life easier. So I have the rider's name, where he's from, which team he's riding, and the place in which stage we are, and all this information already prepared in a preset, so I can do it really fast.
Yeah, in general I think maybe one of the first to have the pictures online. 200 pictures I took, I would send like 15. It's more than enough. To be on the track and look what we have around. So
it's exactly what the drivers see?
Yeah, this is exactly what the drivers see. This is, we are facing the same route, you know, and yeah, that's it, just having the driver's experience, but quite slower.
Okay. Hello? Yeah, there we go. Again, he's saying the same thing. It's so much luck involved. You can go through all of this planning, but if you're not in the right spot at the right time, it's all to waste. Panning. So just a few of the techniques. a few of the things that we have in mind. A lot of this is across all photography. It's not just motorsport photography that this comes up to, but one of the big skills with motorsport photography that is probably slightly unique to motorsport photography is the art of panning. So when I go into a race, these are some of the things that I double check my camera is set to. I always use manual. It's my personal choice. I would recommend aperture priority or shutter priority, or manual if you're happy using manual. I use wide apertures. This is why I was so glad finally to get a 400 2.8. The main reason I use a wide aperture is not to get a higher shutter speed. It's actually to isolate the subject from the background. A lot of racetracks are very messy in terms of cluttered background. So to get that separation between your subject and the background, use a wider aperture. Sometimes it's unavoidable when you want to shoot a very slow shutter speed. You are f/18, f/20. That's when ND filters come into play to help slow down the shutter speed without having to increase the aperture too much. AFC, so continuous autofocus. You're always shooting something that is moving, something that is dynamic. You want your camera to continue focusing on that subject. Single shot or low burst. This is something that I tell people in my photography workshops. One guy a couple of years ago came on a workshop. We shot twice in the pit. We shot twice on track. Maybe an hour and a half total shooting time. He came away with over 15,000 photos. 15,000. So, digital memory costs nothing, but think about the time you have to spend processing all of those photos, or at least trawling through all of those photos to select the ones that you want to deliver to your client. I always shoot RAW. I just find that it works for my workflow. It gives me the best image that I can then work with in Lightroom. And again, it just works for me. If JPEG works for you, work with JPEG. So on track panning, you'll see there's a very particular technique that most people have got. With long lenses, I've seen a lot of videos with the 400 2.8 where photographers are holding it like this, especially the bloggers when they first brought out the 400 2.8, and they're shooting away like this. This is not the right way to hold a lens like this. You want a firm grip underneath the body. That is not just for stability. So what happens in a long lens like this is you have a lot of glass elements, a lot of the vibration within that lens. So it stops those glass elements moving around too much. This is why with a monopod, you'll see they have their hand resting on top. It just helps, one, with stability, and two, taking out a lot of the vibrations. It's not just relaxing. It's much more about the technique, and it's about long lens techniques. You'll find a lot of videos on YouTube relating to that. So always start off at a higher shutter speed and work your way down when it comes to panning. There's no point just rolling it down to a 30th of a second, half a second, anything like that. You will get a lot of rubbish. You will get a lot of junk. To get movement in a car's wheels varies depending on your focal length. If you're at 15 mil, you will be shooting at a 60th of a second to get movement. If you're at 400 mil, you will get a very, very similar amount of movement at 400th of a second. That's all due to the fact how much space you're covering during the time the shutter is open. So if you imagine your field of view on a wide lens is very, very wide. So when you pan, you're actually covering very little distance. On a long lens, when you're panning, you're covering much more distance. So you can have a higher shutter speed. So this is where, again, I spoke to a couple of people during the break. This is where sometimes I can't quite comprehend. I can explain it, but I can't quite comprehend it in my brain. So feel free to ask me afterwards. Feel free to give me a call, send me a message if doesn't quite make sense. Your plane of focus is straight, but a car will be further away from you there, if it's coming in a straight line in front of you. The only time that car is in line with your plane of focus is when it is directly in front of you. If you want to shoot with a very, very low shutter speed and you want that car to be in focus front to back, it has to be completely parallel to the plane of focus. You'll see that as the car comes towards you, the front will be in focus, but the back won't. As it goes away, the back will be in focus, but the front won't. So effectively, the front of the car is moving at a different speed or on a different plane to the front as it's coming towards you and then going away from you. I hope that makes sense. Anyone want to ask? No? Practice makes perfect. It's a simple thing, and you know, I talk about the amount of photos you take and having to trawl through them. This guy who talks 15,000, you know. Sometimes when I have a shot in my mind, I will spend an hour in one location during an endurance race. It's the only time you can have that liberty to do that. I will spend an hour in one place at very, very slow shutter speeds to get one photo. And that's all I need. I just need one photo. But sometimes it's worth that effort for the result. So as I said earlier, you'll see this one is a 20mm lens, and it's shot at a 15th of a second. This is a 200mm lens, 135mm, shot at a 100th of a second. 100th of a second. You can see there's very similar amounts of movement between the two photos, but shot at drastically different shutter speeds. It just shows how a wider focal length, you need a slower shutter speed to get more movement, or the same amount of movement. And then imagine on a 400mm, you would get similar kind of movement at 200th or 250th of a second. So we use ND filters to avoid going too high on the shutter speed. We start high and we work our way down through the shutter speeds. 3/20th is a good focal length for a 70 to 200 to get movement in wheels. That's always the rule when we were rallying. You start off at 3/20th and you work your way down to get movement in the wheels that keeps the car sharp. Practice, practice, practice. You can practice panning anything. You can go stand somewhere on Shegside Road and pan cars as they come by. You can go to a racetrack. You can pan people. You can pan everything. But obviously remember how things move at different speeds. So you can't pan a person as well as a car because you've got all the different movements. You've got head movement, you've got legs movement, you've got arms movement. So all these different elements are moving at different speeds and at different times. That's why motorbikes are more of a challenge to shoot than cars, because they're not just going straight, they're not just coming to a corner and going round, they're leaning as well. So you have to factor in with motorbikes the lean. Leading lines, it's a technique from any different photography. It's how we use leading lines on racetracks to create something that's exciting, something that's interesting for the viewer. It leads the viewer in and creates an interesting image. This is the same corner, 3 different vantage points, one up high, one middle, and one down very, very low. Obviously different focal lengths as well, but it just goes to show that how the leading lines change, how the lines change between the different images. I talk about the environment, I talk about creating something that's wide, giving something breathing space. It's not always the case. Some of them interesting, coming straight towards you, coming straight away from you, and there's opportunities to shoot something that is not just a little car in a big frame or a big car in a big frame. It's not just always car. It's not just car and landscape. Different factors create different images. And then creativity. So one thing that I think about much more now than I used to, and this comes from my inspiration, this comes from photographers I find inspiring. People like Jamie, people like Camden Thrasher, who I'll show you a video on later, people like Nick Dungan. They all use light in a different way. This is the biggest opportunity to create something unique. The moment happens once. That light is only there for that moment. Whereas the car will go around and around and around and around. The light will be the only changing factor. So it's finding the right time of the day to shoot at a different location. So I know to get the grid pattern from the Yas Hotel on the tarmac, I need to be up there around about 11 o'clock in the morning. I know to get this light on the Armco, I need to be there around about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I know to get night, the Yas Hotel light, 7, 8 o'clock at night. So it comes a lot with experience, it comes a lot with looking at other people's, but also walking around. One thing that I found this weekend, and a lot of people found it a little weird, is there's a media shuttle golf buggy that runs around Yas Marina Circuit. Every time it would come, no, I'm okay. I walked, over 4 days, I walked 75 kilometers. Doesn't look like it, but I promise you I did. Because you see so much more when you walk. You can get to a location, you can think, well, that's nice, but okay, maybe if I come back in 2 hours' time. Maybe if I go back tomorrow morning, I wait for the light. You can then use your apps, photo pills, TPE, to gauge where the light will be, to gauge how the shadows will be. Don't always jump on the media shuttle. So camera settings, generally always manual or shutter aperture priority, whichever you. Don't use full auto. Don't let the camera decide what it wants to shoot. Tell it what you want to shoot. Dial in exposure compensation, make it lighter, make it darker, but tell it if you want to go slow, use shutter priority. If you want separation, use aperture priority. So head on, the cars are traveling towards you, you want to freeze that car. The car is traveling in front of you from side to side, you want slower shutter speed. So higher shutter speed for head on, traveling away, slower shutter speed for side on to get that movement. Continuous autofocus, focus tracking, I normally have that set to quite slow focus tracking because I don't want it to try and pick up if something comes between, especially at Yas, you have lampposts. I don't want the camera to try and focus on a lamppost as I'm panning a car. So you have it on a low sensitivity, so it's not always trying to track what's between you and the subject. RAW, burst mode, high speed, and then ISO as low as possible. It's not always possible, especially when it comes to shooting at night. One thing that I didn't put on here is I never shoot with VR on track, or IS, image stabilization, whatever your brand calls it. It works against you. The idea of image stabilization, I know brands, Nikon, Sony, Canon, they've all got these panning modes. I've never found one that works for me. It may work for you. I've never found one that works for me. So instinctively, I have it turned off. If you're moving from left to right, if you're moving right to left, however you're panning, the lens is thinking, there's movement. I must stop that movement. So the way it works is it moves the sensor around and the lens around to try and stop and compensate for that movement. You don't want it to. You want that movement.
Covering an endurance sports car race is a visceral and overwhelming experience.
You know, I'll skip that one. I think we're running a little bit short on time. I don't want to take up. So workflow. When it comes to shooting at a racetrack, when it comes to shooting, especially an endurance race, I'll use the Golf 12 Hours as an example. That I shot this weekend. You have a lot of deliverables over a very short period of time. I shot for 4 teams, all driving Aston Martin cars. So the overall client was Aston Martin, and then each team has a different requirement. I have to be back in the media center at certain times during the day because they have scheduled social media posts. They have scheduled press releases. You need to work your time and manage your time to give yourself time to get back to a media center, process, deliver, and be back out on track in the shortest time possible. So this gives you an idea of my shots from the Golf 12 Hours. Over 4 days, I shot, what, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11,000, 12,000 shots, nearly. This is the most I shot at a race event for probably 5 years. After Marta and a new climb for me, I had to be very sure that I got their specific shots. So I shot more. I shot to the conditions. I had 4 teams. Teams each want something different. I can't give the beach team Aston Martin the same shots as the Oman Racing Aston Martin, the same shots as, for example, the McLaren. They all want something different. Although I will shoot every single car from every single location, I will only select a shot from 1 or 2 cars from each location. They don't want to be posting the same photos as their competitors. So, first thing that I do, I stick everything on the Lightroom. I let images render, so just for one-to-one images. My computer is old. It takes a little bit of time. But while that's all happening, I've started selecting and rating shots. So I will know that, okay, from this, there's 1 shot that I processed, 2 shots that I processed. I can go through and I can see bursts of each particular car. I can recognize my car. Oman Racing, I rate as number 1. Beach Dean, Aston Martin, I rate as number 2. I can then go through very, very quickly, select, and then go back in and choose depending on the rating. That's how my workflow works for me. I have a friend who uses Photo Mechanic. His is slightly different. It still goes into Lightroom, but it goes through Photo Mechanic first. I'm going to try it. He's recommended that I try it, and to buy 24 hours next year, I'm going to download a copy of Photo Mechanic. I'm going to give it a go. It renders much quickly. It makes his workflow much quicker and much smoother. From a race weekend, I'll create quick collections. So every team that I shoot for gets a collection. I have a rule generally that I will spend 2 to 3 minutes maximum per photo developing. Mainly 30, 60 seconds. You know, there should not be, so long as you have your settings right, there should not be a need to spend more than that time processing race images. Just to be clear, this is race images. If you're spending longer than that, you will have very disappointed clients because you will spend your entire time in the media center. Gives you an idea of what I've changed to achieve this image. It is very, very, very small amounts. So I always just click auto just out of habit, but I always then change the auto settings. I don't know why I click auto, but I do it out of habit and then change the auto settings. So this is 30 seconds of work to get a finished shot ready for a client. It goes into a quick collection, gets exported, uploaded straight to their site. So just some full-res copies of what I delivered to people at the Golf 12 Hours. Using shadow, using light much more, and trying to find these slightly unique shots, something that is also distinguishable as Yas Marina Circuit. This is one of these shots that I will spend an hour trying to get. This is, I think, 1/10 of a second. My hit rate is maybe 1 shot out of 300. Yeah. How's it moving? Okay. Okay. So it's moving around a little bit. 300 shots, I will get 1 that I will keep. But this is for me. This is for portfolio. When I've got all the shots that I want for a client, then I can spend the time doing things like this. This is a unique shot. I've never seen anyone shoot this at Yas. It's only achievable at a slow shutter speed. To get all the movement from the hotel lights, to get all the movement in the tarmac, you have to shoot at a very slow shutter speed. Your keeper rate at slow shutter speeds is very low. This is the second sunset. So this is one of the two sunsets we had at Yas. And again, for a team, so this is our Motorsport. These were a new client for me. These were one of the Aston Martin teams. This is the first time this new Aston Martin Vantage GT3 has been raced. So very important for the 4 teams that I was shooting for, that they had sufficient images from the first ever race. They have specific requirements. So this driver, Ricky, first time he's driven for them. By 12 o'clock on the first day, considering the session only started at 9:30, by 12 o'clock on the first day, they needed a shot of the car and a shot of the driver, Ricky, for a press release. They wanted to announce that he was driving for them. So again, you have to work around the client's requirements. Shadow again. Unfortunately, these are cropped. The originals are 3:2, 4:3 ratio. These are cropped to 16:9 for the screen, so there is a little bit more breathing space. Things like the McLaren logo at the top, you should always think about how you're framing so that you're not cropping off. Same as when you're photographing people, you're not cutting off limbs. Same with brands, same with sponsors. You're always making sure that you have the sponsor logo or the team logo within that shot. I've shot this quite a few times, and again, I've seen more F1 photographers head to this location during an F1 weekend. It's quite nice to see that people are looking at what other people are shooting. It's a difficult position to get into. You've got to go into the infield. It's quite a long walk to get the wrong side of the racetrack underneath the hotel. So I specifically go to this location. I know that this will wipe out a 1-hour session. This will use the entire 1-hour session just going for this shot. But you factor that in. When you're doing your planning, you know where you need to go, where you need to be at certain times to get the right light. Again, something that's a little bit different. I shot this location maybe 5 years ago, just once. I'd never been back again. I went back this weekend. Client were ecstatic with this image. It was one of those images that, with the Yas Marina branding, it told its own story. You always want that story, and the client always wants that story. It's not just about the car, it's about the environment, it's about the circuit, it's about, this is Yas Marina Circuit. There's no question, there's no doubt about that. So this is the reason I have the burn. Hanging out the back of a hire car being driven around Yas Marina Circuit by a racing driver while shooting a racing car. These are opportunities that come around very, very rarely. The cost of rental of the track is around about 20,000 dirhams for half an hour. So it's very expensive. Finding clients who have that kind of budget. Again, as I said, this is the first time this car has raced, so they wanted to go that extra mile. I had 2 laps around that track to get all the shots that the client required. The shots are not just of the front of the car. I have to get the front of the car. I have to get the back of the car. I have to get the side of the car. I have to get the front and side underneath the hotel. I have to get the front underneath the Yas Marina. So the list of shots is very, very long. Great thing about the A9 is that, especially shooting at a 30th of a second to get the movement, 20 frames per second was used. And I can just I took 1,000 photos just of this car doing 2 laps. IS was on, image stabilization was on. It's one of those rare occasions that you will use it because you are bouncing around in the back of a car. You want the car to stay the same place in the frame. You want the road and everything around you and around the car to be the thing that's moving. Unfortunately, the racing driver driving my car was also hitting the curbs. So again, the client the images aren't up to my standard and if they aren't up to their standard. More often than not, if they're not up to your standard, they won't be up to theirs. Inspiration. So this is kind of penultimate. I'll play a short video. There's definitely one person who's been on my photography workshop in the classroom, so he would have seen this. Camden Thrasher, it is his real name, I promise. He is a motorsport photographer from the US. He is a great inspiration for me. He's much, much younger than me. He has an ability to use light like no one else I've ever seen, to find that light, to shoot images that are worthy of much more than just a race team. They are beautiful, beautiful images. But what Camden has done now is that he's shown that the images that he shot don't just need to be photos. They can be much more. I've got the green-eyed monster. I'm so jealous of the vision. And, you know, this isn't something that he's just come to an end of the season and thought, you know, I'll just stick them all together. I'll stick them on at 24 frames per second and I'll make a movie. He's gone into the season shooting for clients, but with an ultimate goal of creating something completely unique, completely different for motorsport. No one can go and do that again, because it's always going to be a Camden Thrasher ripoff. And this makes me really, really jealous. But jealousy is not a bad thing in photography. Jealousy helps you generate drive and generate determination to go and do something that is unique and do something that is different. So we've got another photographer. Nick is a very, very good friend of mine. Nick won the MSA UK Motorsport Photographer, Young Motorsport Photographer of the Year a few years ago now. He's a bit old to be a young photographer. But again, he was an inspiration for me, and he's helped me so much in my journey to become a better photographer through contacts and connections. You know, he's helped me land jobs that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to achieve. And that's a really, really beautiful thing about motorsport photography for me, is that it is much more of a community. It's such a small group and such a niche industry that, yes, we do compete against each other. Yes, we are all pitching for the same clients against each other. But when you create that bond, when you go out and you make friends with these people, you'll realize there's a common interest in cars. And there's a common interest in motorsport, and that then leads to relationships that are not just friendships, but also business. Vladimir Reis is one of the most creative F1 photographers. He is Red Bull's F1 photographer. He uses the hashtag #BeCreative. It's not particularly creative of him, I'll admit, but he uses that hashtag for a lot of his photos because he's always looking at creating something that is slightly unique and slightly different. He's one of the photographers that made me realize it's not always about critical sharpness. It's not always about having a photo of a car that is pin sharp, front to back, in a frame. It's about looking at light. It's about finding something that is slightly different. Yeah, so which one is it? Yeah, so like this one, these are the same locations. This one, all you can see is sparks. This one, there's no car. You know, it's just a different mindset. He shoots every single F1 race for Red Bull, so he has much more time and opportunity to go and be creative. Someone like me, I shoot 2 F1 races a year, Bahrain, Abu Dhabi. It's not always possible because you have such a strict time that you have to get the photos for your client. Darren Heath has been around not quite as long as the Suttons. The Suttons, for me, aren't inspirational from a photography perspective. They're inspirational from a business perspective. They've made a career out of being F1 photographers, but they do a lot of very, very standard stuff. Darren is very creative. I don't know if he still is, but he used to be McLaren's main photographer. He's very outspoken. If anyone follows his Twitter, I think he is at F1 Photographer on Twitter. Very outspoken. He may have calmed down a little bit recently, but he's been around for so long. When I was compiling this list of influencers, my inspiration, I really struggled to find a rally photographer that I found inspiring. And that was quite sad for me. I don't know if it's just because they don't have nice flashy websites like these guys or anything like that, but I found that generally they've fallen into the trap, especially recently, of over-processing or, you know, going down the whole Instagram filters theme. And it's not my style of photography, and when I ever do go back to the UK or go back to Europe and hopefully get back into rally photography, I actually think I will be a better photographer because of my time spent on a circuit, because of that drive and need to shoot something that is different. 20 laps, the car's passing in front of you. You don't get 20 opportunities to shoot. You don't always, endurance racing, yeah. You don't always get 20 opportunities to take one photo. You need to think of those 20 laps as 20 opportunities to take 20 different photos. And that's something that I've learned with circuit photography that needs to go back into rally photography. You only get one chance to take that one photo on rallies. So you need to do a lot more planning, a lot more preparation. In my mind, I haven't shot a rally in the UK for a long time. I want to, not even UK, Europe, WRC, the cars, the speed, the opportunities, the color is much more prominent then. My mindset is completely different. So I just thought I'd finish with something that is a passion. It's not something, again, that I get opportunity to shoot very often, but it is loud and it is fast. And that is aviation. Something that we're very lucky, very close to my house in the UK, we have what they call LFA7, the Mach Loop, for anyone who follows this kind of stuff, yeah. Which is a low-fly zone for the US, the UK military. When other air forces come over, they all go and have a play at low-level photography. You walk for an hour up the side of a mountain, and you can get above the planes. It's just something that's a little bit different, a little bit unique, especially here where there's so many rules for photographing planes, that we get a great opportunity to go and shoot in the UK. I'm dying to go back next year. Hopefully during the summer I'll get time to shoot with the 400mm. I haven't taken the 400mm up there yet because I've only had a few months. I haven't been to the UK with it. Yes, something a little bit different, something a little bit unique. So go and have a look. There's a few photographers out there. There's a few Facebook pages. The hashtag probably that you're best looking for on Instagram is MachLoop, M-A-C-H-L-O-O-P. These are just a few of my kind of favorite photos. This is with the A9. This is the A9 and the 70-200 f2. But it uses a lot of the same skills. So this is wide aperture, quite actually a slow shutter speed. These are traveling at 600-700 miles per hour. This is shot at maybe 200th of a second. Incredibly difficult, and the keeper rate is very low. You can go up there, you can spend a whole day up there and not see a single plane, which has happened to me before. But it's nice to be out in the countryside. It's nice to be out in the mountains. You can connect with me on 2 Instagram pages. So Rally Sport is kind of my personal page. All my motorsport stuff goes on there. I've tried to make it much more motorsport related recently. You can also connect with me on goexplore.ae. I'm probably a little bit more active on that. I have a passion for traveling this incredible country, exploring this incredible country, showcasing some of the places that I find, time-lapse, travel photography around the world, UAE. Go and have a look. Connect with me, send me a message. If I'm not following you, I still get the message notification, so I will always respond to you. Just tell me you came here and yeah, get in touch. I'll be sticking around for quite a while yet. Feel free to ask me any questions. Come and have a play with the gear. If anyone's going to the Dubai 24 hours, if anyone wants to come down to the Dubai 24 hours, just drop me a message. I'll be over there for 4 days. I may not be able to spend huge amounts of time with you because I will still have clients to shoot for, but just if you want to come and shadow, if you want to come and grab a coffee, anything, more than welcome. This is the first time I've done a workshop like this. I enjoyed delivering it. I hope you really enjoyed listening to me ramble on for 2.5 hours, 2 hours. Thank you very much. Question and answers. I thought I was going to get away with that. Does anyone have any questions? We have a microphone, yes.
Do you have a favorite F number that you play around with?
1.4, 2.8. Yeah, they don't make a 400 1.4 otherwise. Yeah. The slowest lens I own is 2.8.
David, you wear glasses And when you're looking through generally the viewfinder, or you're looking at the back of the. Are you looking at the digital display on the back, or?
I only use the viewfinder.
Optical.
I only use the viewfinder. I don't use my glasses when I shoot. I have an eye cup on the back of my lens, on the back of the camera, sorry. And with the diopter, I can adjust it to my eyesight. My eyesight is not that bad. I struggle to see distances, but nah, it's okay. The diopter adjusts enough that I can find something that works for me.
Thanks. Just the second question was just on the. I'm a Nikon photographer, and I've been kind of flirting with the Sony brand for some time, and I'm thinking whether it would make sense in terms of weight. But did you ever think of using your lenses and just having using your Nikon lenses on your Sony camera, or does it make sense?
They don't work.
They don't work. Okay.
They don't work. So I did have a Metabones adapter when I first got the Sony. You cannot get an autofocus lens to work that well on a Nikon lens to work that well on the Sony body. Canon will work, but you will not find the autofocus fast enough for motorsport. I even used a Sony 300mm 2.8, which is what's the other mount to Sony? A mount. So I used an A mount with an adapter on an A9, and it still was not fast enough. So thank God now we have native FE 400mm 2.8. I have now all the kit that I need to shoot motorsport, and I've actually seen Nick Dungan has just bought a 400mm 2.8 Sony. He's ditching Canon after 10 years for pretty much the same reason that I did, from a weight perspective and a speed perspective.
You use teleconverters. Are you happy with them in terms of sharpness or the?
Sorry, say that again.
You use teleconverters.
I have teleconverters.
Haven't used or just have?
I've used the two times, a few times, but only for static shots. We have an issue in the region. It's hot. It is incredibly hot. When you start shooting above 400mm, the heat off the ground has a massive effect on image quality. You add a 2x converter to a 400, it becomes 800. You get heat haze. It's not necessarily the sharpness of the teleconverter and the lens. It is the environment that creates the issue with sharpness and the heat. So I have used it for static stuff, but I don't tend to use it for motorsport stuff. I prefer to focus with my feet where possible, or crop where possible.
Hi. As a photographer, for us marshals, what would you like us to understand about your job so we can do what we need to do but facilitate you at the same time?
Sorry, say that again.
For us as marshals, you
Yeah.
as a photographer,
Yes.
what would you like us to understand about your job so that we can do our job but facilitate you at the same time?
I've never had an issue with a marshal. I've never once had an issue with a marshal. As a photographer at a racetrack, we have very strict rules. We are informed of no-go areas, where they call red zones. The first time ever at Yas, I was told that there were red zones. We've never had red zones before at Yas, but you respect these red zones. I did see photographers who weren't. So what you have at a racetrack is you have an Armco barrier, which is about this high. You have a small gap, and then you have a big catch fence. You stand behind the catch fence. I saw photographers walking between the Armco and the catch fencing. If a car was to ever crash there, you will get sandwiched and sliced into. We need to be aware of our own safety as a photographer. There are photographers who don't abide by the rules, not just for their safety, but for the safety of others, and I think it's wrong. I did actually report these photographers to race control during the race, because I just think it's wrong. I actually saw a fight at an F1 race in Yas a few years ago, where... Yeah, it was last year. Yeah, between a photographer and a marshal, the photographer got arrested, put in prison overnight, because he wouldn't listen to the marshal's response. He got abusive, he got aggressive, but he was completely in the wrong. The photographer was in the wrong. Marshals do a fantastic job. Thank you very much for marshalling. Thank you very much for allowing us to have races. Without you, the races don't take place. Anyone else? No? I'm hoping it's because I've covered everything and not because you're all asleep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much. And people also online were watching. Thank you, people, for coming every time. And thank you for trusting HIPA and Sonia. Let's take a group photo. And don't forget to take your certificates before going home.